And Willie, as we look through the report, as we look through the letter, actually, to Chairman Burr and Chairman Schiff, Mr. Rudy Giuliani is a central figure in the effort. Attorney General Barr appears to be involved as well. Over the past 4 months, more than half a dozen U.S. officials have informed me of various facts related in this effort. And then he goes on to talk about the information that is provided herein. It is remarkable, again, in this letter that Attorney General Barr is mentioned as being involved. And yet Barr chooses to, Jeremy said, cover it up, however you want to describe it, chooses to not let the acting DNI go to the Hill to reveal a whistleblower report that, as it says right here, Attorney General Barr appears to be involved in it as well. Mika, what are you reading?
I'll jump to 7 pages in. During this same time frame, multiple U.S. officials told me that the Ukrainian leadership was led to believe that a meeting or phone call between the president and President Zelensky would depend on whether Zelensky showed a willingness to, quote, play ball on the issues that have been publicly aired by Mr. Lutsenko and Mr. Giuliani. It goes on. I mean, it's pretty damning.
Here's the nut. Namely, he sought to pressure the Ukrainian leader to take actions to help the president's 2020 re-election bid.
Whoa.
There it is.
Wow.
That line.
Wow.
Willie Geist.
He did what he's been accused of doing. It's impeachable.
There are redactions.
It is. There are redactions, Willie Geist, but again, you look at the language here, and it involves getting him involved in the 2020 election to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, and also, of course, that the president has involved. It appears that the president has involved Attorney General Barr in this as well, in the letter that went to Burr and Schiff, and of course, it is extraordinarily damning that the Ukrainians were led to believe that they would only get cooperation from Donald Trump and the United States of America if they, quote, played ball and helped dig up dirt on Joe Biden.
And really, Claire, this underlines in more specific detail, because there's follow-on investigation of what we read in the summary of the phone call yesterday. Yeah, this gives us much more detail.
And what's really interesting is the White House distributed talking points, ham-handedly, I might add, because they sent them to the Democrats too.
Yep.
And part of that talking point was that Zelensky brought up Giuliani first.
Right.
Well, let's look at this document in that context. And let's go back to April, when the president called him first after the election, as Matt referenced, and started talking about how you've got to work with Giuliani. Right. Then Giuliani announced he was going to the Ukraine. Right. Now, wait a minute. What is Giuliani doing going to the Ukraine?
And he says that the State Department sent him. So talk about ensnaring a web
so
of people.
Pompeo now has some explaining to do.
Exactly.
And obviously, they knew they brought up Giuliani because Giuliani had been the epicenter of this whole effort by Trump to figure out a way to make Joe Biden's son the focus of his re-election effort.
And if you go to Roman numeral 2, on page 3, efforts, Gene, to restrict access to records related to the call. In the days following the phone call, I learned from multiple U.S. officials that senior White House officials. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.